Let's take a look at some of the top storylines heading into week 1 as we go into our 4-minute offense. The North Dakota State Bison are coming off of a national championship season, making it their 6th FCS title, 14th in total if you count the 8 they won back when they were a Division II program. What they have done is nothing short of spectacular, essentially making themselves the Alabama of the FCS. Now, head coach Chris Kleiman, who is entering his 5th season, doesn't like the lofty and, to be completely honest, unrealistic expectations bestowed upon his team and that program by fans and the media that it's championship or bust for North Dakota State. I can definitely understand that from a coaching perspective. Not all great seasons end with the title, but as long as the Bison continue to recruit, develop, and play the way they do on the field, most of their seasons usually do. The Lehigh Mountain Hawks running back Don Bragalone has been outstanding since stepping foot on campus. He was the first Lehigh freshman back in over a decade to rush for over 1,000 yards and has increased that number each season at Lehigh, having posted 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons. Bragalone now finds himself only 129 yards away from the school's all-time rushing record of 3,696, held by Robbie Abdullah back in 1997, and 3 rushing touchdowns shy of the school record of 42 held by Rod Gardner back in 1977. With the way Bragalone runs with the football, it wouldn't surprise me to see both records come tumbling down after week 1. He's a tremendous player. I would expect to see him as a finalist for the Walter Payton Award come season's end. And we have to say a welcome back to the Idaho Vandals, who made their official return to the FCS and to the Big Sky Conference, where they used to call home, from 1965 to 1995. Idaho made the moves to the FBS ranks in 96. They made it to bowl games in 98, 2009, and 2016. And prior to making the move to the FBS, the Vandals were an FCS powerhouse, and the hope is that moving back to this level would allow them to get back to the top of the Big Sky and subsequently the FCS. Last weekend during Week 0's FCS Kickoff, the North Carolina A&T Aggies were able to upset 6th-ranked Jacksonville State in what turned out to be a wild contest. Both teams committed a bunch of penalties and mistakes, but were able to overcome their own mistakes to start playing some really good football toward the 3rd and 4th quarter. It came down to the last possession where the Aggies defense was able to force a turnover and run out the clock. It was a big-time win for the Aggies and the MEAC as they were able to flex their muscle against a very good perennial playoff participant in Jacksonville State. And speaking of upsets, what a perfect lead into this week's Upset Alert segment, where there are a bunch of games that have upset potential written all over them. They say styles make fights, right? Well, we have a good matchup here in Georgia between Kennesaw State and Georgia State. The Panthers are hoping to avoid what happened to them last year in the opener against another FCS opponent in Tennessee State, in which they lost that ball game. Kennesaw, which is only about 25 miles north of Atlanta, had a deep playoff run last year and bring in a different dynamic to the table with their option offense. Quarterback Chandler Burks and wide receiver Justin Sumter provide some big-time playmaking capabilities. Defensively, All-American linebacker Bryson Armstrong, who was the Jerry Rice Award winner last year, leads them on defense. It's about alignment, assignment, and execution when you're playing against an option team, and I actually think Georgia State will be much better defensively than they were last year, so I'm taking the Panthers in a close one. Look for wide receiver Penny Hart to have a big day for Georgia State. This is going to be one heck of a game between Southeastern Louisiana and UL Monroe. They match up extremely well, and in my opinion, they are spitting images of one another. The Lions' new head coach Frank Selfo will field a team that looks to be really strong on both sides of the line of scrimmage, and where they have a chance in this game is with their running game. UL Monroe returns 8 starters on a defense that gave up over 233 yards rushing a game at 5.6 yards a carry. Now, will that be better because of experience, or will it be more of the same from the Warhawks defense this year? I think they'll improve slightly, but it won't be enough. I'm taking the Lions in an upset. Stony Brook travels out to Colorado Springs to take on the Air Force Falcons. Just like with the Kennesaw State-Georgia State game, it's about being disciplined for 4 quarters in regards to defending the option. I'm excited to see if quarterback Joe Carbone can build on the breakout season he experienced last year with the Seawolves. If their offense can capitalize on some big plays early, then they have a chance. I like the Seawolves defense this season, as I think they'll do well, but Air Force is a different animal and will be one to stave off the upset-minded Seawolves in this contest. Richmond returns back to the scene of the crime, where they upset the Virginia Cavaliers in 2016 by the score of 37-20. While Richmond looks to be just as strong as they were 2 years ago, the Cavaliers look to be in much better shape than the 2-10 2016 squad. The biggest matchup in this game that I'm excited to see is on the perimeter. The Spiders have an outstanding receiving core led by DeJon Brissett and Cartrell Simpson. Virginia, despite losing Quinn Blanding to graduation, who was a free safety, is very strong on the back end. Free safety Juan Thornhill is on the Senior Bowl watch list, and both Tim Harris and Bryce Hall at the corner positions are returning starters and are really good ones. This will be a close game for sure, but it'll have a different result in the end. I like Virginia. JUCO transfer quarterback Bryce Perkins will make his debut as starting quarterback and will impress the Cavalier fans. The Aggies travel across the state to meet up with East Carolina. A&T is coming off of an impressive Week 0 upset over 6th-ranked Jacksonville State, and it was their defense that was the most impressive takeaway from that ball game for me. Offensively, they struggled to get their ground game going, which is definitely surprising considering who they have in the backfield as they head into Greenville to take on the Pirates. East Carolina got dominated last season in the opener by James Madison, and we'll be looking to avoid that scenario once again. Wide receiver Trevin Brown is one of the best receivers in the country and should find some success against A&T. I also like how East Carolina is built along the line of scrimmage. They'll take care of business and get the W in their season opener. This is a huge game for both teams as there's an in-state recruiting element tied to it and the first ever meeting between these two schools. Grambling is coming into this game having to replace some big-time playmakers on offense. Their defense, led by All-American linebacker Darius Christmas, should be strong once again. New Raging Cajun head coach Billy Napier has brought a lot of optimism to the program, and mission number one is to improve a defense that struggled to stop anyone last season. Look for the Cajuns to put the ball in the belly of sophomore running back Trey Ragas and be able to slow down the Tigers' offense enough to get the win. Central Arkansas travels to Tulsa to take on the Golden Hurricane in an intriguing matchup. The Bears have the speed and athleticism to match up on the perimeter with Tulsa. Their offensive line, quite honestly, matches up well with Tulsa's defensive front. The biggest question for Central Arkansas is at quarterback. Who will step in and take over the reins this year? Also, don't let the 2017 2-10 record fool you. Tulsa wasn't that bad of a team as it would seem. They have 15 starters returning and look to be in much better shape this time around. I like Tulsa. This is going to be a fantastic matchup between Monmouth and Eastern Michigan. The Hawks look strong on both sides of the ball and are coming off of an FCS playoff appearance. Eastern Michigan finished 5-7 last year, but you can easily make the case that they should have been 11-1 with the amount of close games that they lost in last season. The Eagles look really good on defense, so it'll be up to the Hawks' offensive line to give quarterback Kenji Bahar time to find his big-time targets and wide receiver Reggie White Jr. and tight end Jake Powell to keep the pace. This will be a very close game, but I do see the Eagles having enough defense to get the victory. I think this game between Nicholls and Kansas will be tightly contested. It'll essentially come down to which quarterback can protect the football and keep his offense on pace. Both Nicholls chased Forcade and Kansas Peyton Bender threw double-digit interceptions this past season. The reason why I feel as though it'll be tightly contested is because of all the experience that'll be on the field for both teams. The Colonels return 18 starters, while the Jayhawks return 19. For Nicholls, it'll be important for their defense to get off to an early start against a Kansas offense that looks to find some early season momentum on that side of the ball where they struggled mightily in 2017. This is a tough call for me, but I do see Kansas riding the ship starting off the season with a W. Northern Arizona and UTEP meet up for the first time since 1947. It'll be a great barometer test for both the Miners, who are coming off of a winless season and have a new head coach in Dana Dimo, and the Lumberjacks, who are coming in looking to get off to a big start in what could be a special year for them in the Big Sky. Northern Arizona has two excellent playmakers in quarterback Case Cookus and wide receiver Emmanuel Butler. Butler at 6'3", 220 will likely draw the coverage of either Kalen Beverly or Nick Needham, both of whom are excellent corners. I have more questions about the Miners' offense more so than their defense. They struggled on both ends of offense last year, and while they'll be better this season than they were last season, I think Northern Arizona hits the ground running and pulls off the upset. Huge matchup here between James Madison and North Carolina State. Instantly, I want to focus on what could be the biggest matchup in this game between the Wolfpack passing game and that Duke secondary. This is a strength versus strength, stud versus stud matchup. NC State's trio of Calvin Harmon, Jacoby Myers, and Stephen Lewis up against a strong JMU secondary led by its corners, Rashad Robinson and Jimmy Moreland. Both teams are equally strong along the offensive line, but State has an advantage on the defensive front seven, or within the defensive front seven. The Dukes are breaking in a new quarterback in former Pitt Panther Ben DiNucci to replace Brian Shore. He has some big shoes to fill, and I still think they have to take the wait-and-see approach, or I will have to take the wait-and-see approach with DiNucci before fully buying into what he brings to the table in the passing game. I'll go with NC State.
I think the FCS gives a student athlete a chance to really develop in the classroom and on the field, I don't think there's anything that gets in the way of the development of the student athlete. Whereas in sometimes other conferences, other levels of play, I think there's some things that could sway a student athlete in a wrong direction here or there. But I think at the FCS level, I think it's all about the student athlete. I think it's all about his development in the classroom and also on the playing field. And it really it keeps your values and your goals right in front of you. And I think there's less things that are going to take you away from those things.
Now let's preview some of the big games on the Week 1 schedule, and we'll start in Dayton, Ohio, as the Flyers welcome in the Robert Morris Colonials. The Colonials opened up with Dayton last year and nearly pulled off the victory this season under new head coach Bernard Clark. The hope is that last year's experience can show itself on the field and secure a win. Right now, the Flyers, led by quarterback Alex Jeske, seem to be a little bit more stable on offense and should have enough to put this one away. Should be a good one at Finley Stadium as the Golden Eagles of Tennessee Tech link up with Chattanooga. New head coach Dwayne Alexander is trying to bring his alma mater back to prominence, and starting off with a cross-state foe in Chattanooga is a great test. The Mocs are healthy coming into the season after 2017, where they were plagued by injuries to key players. The story in this one will be along the offensive line. The Mocs return 4 starters up front and should be able to lean on that Tech defense to get the victory. We should be in for a defensive treat as North Alabama makes their Division I debut against the Thunderbirds of Southern Utah. The Lions were a Division II power and now make the move to the Big South Conference. This game against Southern Utah is a barometer to see where they are as a program and where they still have to go. What's interesting about this matchup is they are very similar, at least defensively, to Southern Utah. The T-Birds, despite losing a lot of players on defense, played a lot of guys last season and have good experience coming back. They should be really good offensively as they break in a new quarterback, and this one to me is a pretty tricky call if you ask. I think North Alabama will come in more ready than many people nationally believe. Look for them to pull off the upset against Southern Utah behind the strength of their running game and solid defense. This year's MEAC SWAC Challenge is between Prairie View A&M and North Carolina Central. This is going to be a fantastic matchup between 2 first-year head coaches and 2 really good football teams. We almost saw the Panthers pull off the upset last week against the Rice Owls, losing on a last-second field goal. The Eagles come into this game with a wealth of experience on both sides of the ball and tremendous depth in the backfield. 2 major questions. Can the Eagles stop the red-hot quarterback-wide receiver combination of Jalen Morton and Tristan Wallace? And can the Panthers stop the run, as they'll see a lot of it coming downhill from the Eagles? I like Central in this ball game. The running game and their ability to apply pressure will prove to be just enough against the Panthers, who will be a factor in the SWAC race this upcoming season. Big game right off the bat in the Patriot League between Holy Cross and Colgate. The Crusaders will be led by their defense with star linebacker Ryan Brady and defensive end Teddy Capsis. Wide receiver Blaze Bell gives them a nice versatile threat in the passing game. Everything is still wait and see though, as new head coach Bob Chesney will sprinkle in some new wrinkles here and there as he tries to lead Holy Cross back to prominence in the FCS. Raiders head coach Dan Hunt's team missed the playoffs last year with a 7-4 record. They should have been in the playoffs, and they look like strong contenders in the Patriot League this season. You can't say enough great things about quarterback Adam Brenneman and what he brings to the table. He was one of the top freshmen in the FCS last season. He spearheads an experienced offense that has some beef in the backfield with tailback James Holland. Defensively, losing Pat Afriye is huge, but they are still strong within the front 7. I think Colgate wins this game, but it won't be like last year's 45-7 victory. Holy Cross is going to be really good this season, so this game will definitely be a lot closer. SoCon matchup in Week 1 as the Citadel travels to Gibbs Stadium to take on the Wofford Terriers. The Bulldogs come into this matchup much more experienced on offense, with 9 starters returning to only 5 on defense. How quickly they get up to speed on that side of the ball will be key. For the first time in 30 years, the Terriers will have a new head coach as legend Mike Ayers retired, making Josh Conklin, the former Pitt defensive coordinator, the new head man in charge. He's taken over a strong roster, especially on defense with defensive lineman Miles Brown, who is an All-American, and offensively they are led by running back Andre Stoddard, another All-American. I think we'll see the Terriers open up the season in a big way with a win, and that'll push their record over the Citadel to 19 victories in the last 21 meetings if they're able to pull it off. The Bryce Cowell Musket is up for grabs as New Hampshire and Maine get together for an early CAA tilt. The Wildcats have their eyes set on Frisco, Texas this January as they look strong as any team in the FCS. The Black Bears have quietly built a solid program that seems to pump out talent across both sides of the line of scrimmage, and that gives them a chance each and every week. For Maine, it'll come down to the passing game. Can they get consistency from the quarterback position to pull off the victory? The Wildcats return 18 starters and are armed with one of the best offensive lines in the CAA. I think Maine will have a good season. I just don't see them knocking off New Hampshire. I'm taking the Wildcats. It's the John Merritt Classic between Bethune-Cookman and Tennessee State. I think this is a huge game for both teams from a playoff perspective. The Wildcats look to be a serious player in the MEAC this year. Head coach Terry Sims brings a strong defense and ground game into this matchup. Tennessee State's head coach Rod Reed figures to do the same with his Tigers as they have built a bully along the offensive line. Quarterback Michael Hughes is looking to build on the success he had last year as a starter. The defensive line looks a bit new, but the back seven is still strong and talented. I like Tennessee State in this game. Bethune's passing game is still a work in progress, and I think that'll give the Tigers just enough of an advantage to win. What an intriguing matchup in week 1 as Northern Iowa travels to Montana to face Bobby Hawk's Grizzlies. The Panthers are a lot like Western Illinois in regards to how solid of a program they are and how consistent they tend to be along the lines of scrimmage. They're banking on their offensive line to be much better than it was at times last season, but everywhere else, they look solid. The Grizzlies have one of the better defensive players in the country in Josh Buss and a lot of talent on offense. There's a reason why folks in Missoula have a ton of optimism. Grizz quarterback Dalton Snead and Panther quarterback Eli Dunn will duke it out all game long, but look for the Grizz to make enough plays to win in what will surely be a wild one. And finally, Cal Poly makes the trip to Fargo to face the defending national champion North Dakota State Bison. The Mustangs are glad to have their excellent fullback Joe Prothero back in the fold after he was injured virtually all last season. Is their defense up to task, as North Dakota State has the ability to wear down defensive fronts with their power running game? Normally, option football will cause a ton of havoc for teams, but I've seen North Dakota State handle Charleston Southern and Wofford with no problem. I think they'll do the same in this one against the Mustangs. So that's it for this week's episode of the FCS Kickoff. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media accounts, and be sure to check out and subscribe on iTunes to the Football Game Plan's FCS Opening Drive podcast, where David Hashagen and myself will keep you up to date to what's going on around the FCS.